All right, so guys, this is part 2, running backs, our plan in 2025. You didn't see the first show, check it out. I'll link to it at the end. But Scott, we always start off with a trade. 12-team Superflex, PPR, 1.75 for the tight end, start 10. Are you going Bucky Irving or Odunze? Go ahead, man.
Oh, man. What a world. What a difference a year makes, too. You know, the thought of taking a day 3 running back of Bucky Irving's profile over a receiver that people were just like, can't miss at worst as a, mid-tier wide receiver 2, but his value is just going to explode and he's tied to an elite quarterback. And then here we are. And I think this is pretty easily Bucky Irving, because I think if you're just looking at the trade value, sure, people still like Odunze, but I don't think you go out there and you just name your price. He's not an asset in terms of how people view receivers this year versus years past. I think he's still a good asset, but I think Bucky's worth more. The Bucky production, if you just go heads up on production, is probably going to be higher in the short term. And then do I really care about non-difference making receiver production 3 years down the road? Maybe I have a little better of an asset in 5 years in Odunze if he just ends up being one of these. If he has Devontae Smith's career, you're going to be like, oh yeah, when he's 27, he'll still have trade value. Bucky Irving, who knows? But I just think it's fair to say after Odunze's rookie year that he's probably on track to just be another one of those. He's a good receiver, but those receivers just don't command the value on the market that they used to. Now, I guess if there's somebody that really still buys into Rome, then you can use him in a better way than this, and you may want to take him just simply because he might be more appetizing to a quote-unquote like rebuilding team. But I think if I'm just looking 2-year window at best, it's Bucky Irving pretty easy.
Shane, how about you, man? It's the 12-team Superflex, PPR, 1.75 at the tight end, start 10. Are you going Bucky or Odunze, my friend?
Scott says it's easy. I don't think it's easy. Like, I'm putting thought into this. Like, I don't just smash the button for Bucky. I will say this, though. Like, Bucky's kind of in a perfect situation, right? Like, he's got Rachaad White there for at least another year. So what's going to change next year? It's not like they're going to add another running back to the mix to steal their work. Like, they have Sean Tucker, who, whatever, he got in there when he got in there. Also concerned about Odunze's rookie season. You could tell me that he had to deal with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, but he went out and did what he did, which was 8.2 fantasy points. Now, he had a nice target share. He had some nice peripherals. But all that said, yeah, I'd probably just go ahead with Bucky. If I wanted a receiver, I think I would use Bucky in a package to try to get a better receiver, or at least a receiver that's already established themselves. I still like Rome. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be good. You know what I mean? But I know Bucky was, and I know his value, what it is. So if I can use Bucky with another player and get a established wide receiver, not a Devonta Smith, but something a higher tier of a higher ilk, I think that's how I'd want to play it.
All right, so let's discuss how we're going to treat the running back position going into 2025. We'll see how these rookies fit in once they're in the mix. But Scott, as of today, it's early, but what is your plan for running back in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, if you just take what happened last year and forget about what's coming in from a rookie perspective, I mean, the biggest difference, and we talked about this a little bit in previous shows, the biggest difference was just the health of the running backs compared to the receivers. I mean, if you just take the core starters in our typical format, 12 by 11, 2 running backs, 3 receivers. So on average, the running backs that fit into that range, there were 38 receivers that finished with at least 12 or more points per game. There were 26 running backs that did it. So that kind of aligns with the 2 starting running backs, 3 starting receivers across, the league. The running backs stayed on average 11% healthier in that range. So it was almost a game and a half more missed per receiver than running back, which doesn't seem like a huge deal, but that's 1.5 games in a 16-game fantasy season, right? So it just meant that you probably had to fish in lower tier waters, depending on your tight end premium. How often could you flex tight ends in that range? If you look at the tight ends, even in a 1.75 that finished in that range, they still stayed healthier than the receivers. Even the tight ends were healthier, which historically is not the case. So I think it just felt a little more like this year, you probably used running backs and flexes a little more often. At least your good teams were going, damn, I'm starting guys like Rachaad White and Rico Dowdle. Those are my flexes. Those are better flexes
Chase
than my
Brown
receivers. Those are better than my receivers in the flexes because my receivers were more likely to get injured. But I know for me, 1.75, 2 PPR, like I'm even flexing the Mike Gesicki's and the Hunter Henrys just as much as I'm flexing running backs. So it just felt more like in your flexes, you just went for whatever is going to score the most points, which historically you're going to get the same production from running backs and tight ends in that range. It's just with the receiver obsession, it was like, okay, if I can have all my value at receiver and they're healthy and they're producing in that flex range, then I also have the trade assets that give me the most leverage. But I think the market is flipped. The real curious thing is this an anomaly? Is the running back health this year an anomaly? I would guess that it is. The running backs averaged like 15.8 healthy games. That's pretty high. That's like almost every week.
Yeah.
Like only a couple guys in that range missed more than 3 games. And a ton of them played every game, including even a week 17 game that probably didn't mean much, if not at all, for fantasy. So I just think that's probably an anomaly. The biggest wild card is when you say, how are you treating running back in 2025? I mean, you're looking at guys like Rico Dowdle, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, J.K. Dobbins, James Conner, a lot of guys in that range where you go, they probably have competition from the rookie draft. So when you ask how I'm treating it, I think it's fair to say I'm fine being a little more overweight at running back than I was in the past, just because I don't think the market dynamics allow me to just sell receivers for the same price that I could have in the past. The real question is, how's the impact of the rookie class? Meaning, are we going to be able to reasonably predict who those top 20 to 30 running backs are going to be? I know who the top 5 are going to be, even getting into the range of like guys that were good this year, Kyron Williams, James Cook, like these, Chase Brown, these guys aren't even immune to another running back. And so unless you just tell me I have a super stud asset, I think a lot of disruption could also happen in this range. Even though the health is still there, if this running back class is worth what everyone says it is, you're not going to have a very mundane rookie running back class like last year, where half the guys we liked weren't even impactful. If this class is good, you're not going to have as many of these veterans that are sitting in this range that are just going to run it back again, whether they're healthy or not. So that's the biggest wild card. There's no way that we can have all of those guys or most of those guys hold their value and then go, we're going to introduce another 15 rookie running backs into the mix. There's going to have to be some overlap. There's going to be some rookies that eat away at veterans, some rookies that bust, but it creates kind of a saturation at running back now to where who are the overvalued ones, because I think you get more for running backs on the open market than you ever have.
Shane, how are you going to play that out in 2025? We've got the rookies coming in. We've got the vets like the Joe Mixons of the world, Derrick Henry. Who knows when they're going to stop? How are you playing this?
I'm not buying any of them. Why would I buy any of them coming off? First of all, I'm not buying Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, any of these dudes that are coming off, I don't want to say career years, but in Saquon's, well, yeah, Saquon and Joe Mixon had career years at the age of 28. 29, like Scott just talked about. Health apparently wasn't a concern this year. I guess everybody was stretching and taking their vitamins or something. Saquon Barkley's never played a full season until he got to the Eagles. I don't even know if that's true, but I assume it's true because he's had a bunch of injuries. But more to Scott's point, we've got 20 running backs that are probably going to be drafted. I don't know. How many of those are going to be drafted in the early rounds, would you say, by day 2? 10. So I got 10 running backs that are going to have high draft capital, and they're not going to be drafted. I know Trey Benson and what's that other guy, Blake Corum, kind of disproved this point, but you would think if they're drafted with that high of capital, they're not being drafted just to sit on the bench, especially when the running back world is a committee world now. The only running backs I would think are immune to this are probably like the top tier, Bijan, Achane, Gibbs because he already has Montgomery, but you know what I mean? I think Bucky Irving will be immune to it because he has Rashad White. I don't think I'm going to be able to I'm not buying running backs coming off of this year. I think everyone's getting over their skis like running backs are back for good, which, okay, it was 1 year. Well, let's just relax. You know what I mean? There's no rush to be first. There's not. So if I just throw a bunch of dart throws, if I have a bunch of rookie picks, if I can get a bunch of second round picks and take a bunch of rookies, I'll be okay with that. Even though this year it was kind of the blue bloods at the top 12. If you look at it, it's kind of the guys you expected. It's after that some randos are sprinkled in, but I still think there's going to be change next year. I still think that the rookie class is going to shake some things up. And I don't want to predict which running backs it is that are going to lose that work. If you know what I mean? And if I pay up for these running backs, that means I'm trying to predict which running backs are immune to what's coming in. And like I said, there's only a few off the top of my head that I can think are completely immune, like Bijan, Saquon, maybe Henry, guys like that, Gibbs, because he already has Monty, but we already said that, or I already said that. The voices of me already said that.
I think guys like Achane definitely will get competition.
But he's fine with competition. The only competition I'd be worried about Achane is if they bring in another
Achane.
Yeah,
Achane.
Because someone's going to steal the receiving work. Like, sure, bring in a Jalen Wright. Like, hopefully they bring in another Jalen Wright type. But that's kind of what we thought this year too, right? With Raheem Mostert and
honestly, like that's what I think they should do. Chase Brown and Achane should just get another guy exactly like them till they just run the exact same offense with both of them. But I think with guys like that, even with James Cook to an extent, you probably can guess that they have similar roles. It's hard to envision that the workload is going to be the same. Josh Jacobs, another guy, is injury prone his whole career, goes out, just has 350 touches. I don't even think he missed a drive. You know what I mean? So you're just like that's the kind of guy that you just would never have bet for that to happen. And because what happened with all the backup running backs, like we made a lot of health bets last year. Kyron will never stayed healthy. Well, he did. James Conner will never get through the year. He did. Josh Jacobs will never get through the year. He did. All of them. You know what I mean? So like, is that really Trey Benson, Blake Corum, and Marshawn Lloyd's fault? Now Lloyd was injured himself, but like we made some health bets that we were wrong on. At the same time, I kind of wonder is maybe, because I'm already seeing it out there on social media, the running backs that the community are just saying these guys are going to get ethered, right? Like Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift are going to get ethered. Probably not. They got paid. They're probably going to have the same exact role. Now, with competition, if their offense sucks and they have another good running back on the team, then maybe their 13 points per game may not hold up. But I also think they're the ones that the market is assuming are just going to get steamrolled in the draft, right? Like that, Bears are going to draft a running back and DeAndre Swift's on the bench.
He's dead. That's
probably not how it'll go. There's a lot of those situations where we will bury the incumbent because they weren't elite. Then you look up and you go, but wait a second, that incumbent is the exact same thing as he was last year because the rookie isn't really that good. Then there's going to be other guys where we go, there's no way they will take work from the guy that's there. And that's where the disruption happens. So I think the fair bet, kind of like Shane was saying, was a lot of teams are going to draft running backs. If this running back class is so good, you know what you have to bet? 80% of teams take a running back in the first 5 rounds, which if I have a 5th round running back, that can even be competition in this game today. You know what I mean? So if all these teams are going to draft running backs, hell, I saw Dane Brugler say there's at least 15 running backs they'll go in the first 3 rounds. That there's not 15 landing spots where you go, that rookie is going to smash. If not, if anything, what do you do with a running back if a team like the Texans take one, which they're going to? You know, it's one of these teams where you made the health bet last year. That's where I'm seeing the overvalue, Shane. Like, what if the Ravens draft a running back in early round 3, right? People are going to go, there's no way they'll take any work from Derrick Henry, but you're already valuing Derrick Henry like he will not miss a carry. You know what I mean? And that's where you're getting into the I'm not buying him, but I think other people are buying him. People are still using the logic, Joe Mixon's a workhorse, and he's going to be a workhorse. But that's where you probably have to make those bets. The ones that people think are locked in are the ones you can probably find an edge.
Yeah, and that's the problem is you know, even go back to you talked about injury bets. It wasn't just that. It was also like Kyron fumbled a lot, and Kyron missed ton of games. That would be the exact same thing. We don't know. We literally have no idea how these backfields are going to shake out. We don't. You know what I mean? Like I said, there's a select few you can go, unless of injury, unless of something, cataclysmic. We know that Bijan Robinson's going to get most of the work, right? I'm sure they'll have a Tyler Algier type, if not Tyler Algier. We know, unless of injury, Saquon Barkley is going to take a bunch of carries, although I would guess he's probably going to be injured next year, considering that he's had 350 touches or whatever. But we don't know that, you know, when a player gets drafted to, I don't know, like you said, Tony Pollard, let's just say, we don't know if a player gets added to Tennessee. Well, how's that running back actually going to fit in? And I'm not even going to try to pretend that I do know. So I think the more convicted people are on existing running backs, the more convicted I'll be on moving those running backs to them so that I can take, you know, I'm fine just taking a gamble on multiple darts and hoping some of those running backs work out rather than paying up for a running back and then being wrong.
So I guess my question is, what do you do with, because I look at a backfield like the Titans and I go, they could kind of roll the same backfield out next year, but they probably could also draft another guy that's just like the guys they have, and now there's 3. I mean, we say the Buccaneers won't take one, but what if they draft another Bucky? Then Rashad White gets buried, right? But the problem is the team won't bury Rashad White, so they'll still give him 10 touches a game, and then you're going, yeah, but how is the community? Let's say they take a 3rd round running back like that. They're the team that drafts I don't know, pick a random guy. They're the team that drafts like the Ollie Gordon, right?
Ooh.
He's like the RB9, right? The team, how do you then look at Ollie Gordon and go, what work is he going to take from those other two? And are you that or is that a guy that you'll look at the depth chart chain and go, I don't know if I can draft him, because you're going to still have to pay the 211 for the name Ollie Gordon. You know what I mean? But you're going to look at the opportunity and go, there's not two other guys there that are awful. You know what I mean? That's
the
where
league
does
the league like them? Again, going back to our likability show, that's what it comes down to. If you're in one of those situations where you're wondering, who's the league like?
New OC. What if Seattle takes Travion Henderson? And they go, we need a passing down back. Now you're going like, okay,
there's three of them. What
do you do?
Charbonnet is already there.
Clay, there's going to be some teams where you think the backfield settled and they take one of your favorite guys. And you're going to go, okay, now they took this guy in round 3 or round 4, and he might not even see the field. Now, this isn't Kamani Vidal last year where he's a 6th round afterthought where you're like, oh, maybe he'll be able to start. Like, if this class is that good, there's going to be a lot of these running backs that, what if the Rams take a running back? What if the Cardinals take one? How do you value Blake Corum and Trey Benson at that point? Are they just afterthoughts? Are they worth nothing? I think if this running back class is good, there's going to be a lot of situations where we go, there's too many guys there. And that's where I think you can find, it's not that hard for a random Trey Benson to get nuked in the draft, come back and still somehow score 11 points per game. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
That's the kind of guy you can get for nothing, that you can easily replace these low-end RB2s when people think they're buried. I think the ones you're going to be in trouble on is if you're super convicted that just Jonathan Taylor runs it back and dominates. You know what I mean? And you pay a first for him, then you go, yeah, but he's just in another backfield, kind of like many of these others where he would have completely replaceable. So I think it's interesting. There's going to be a lot of backfields that we look up in July and we go, dude, there's 3 guys that I like. I don't know how to treat it. And then there's going to be other backfields where you're going to go, yeah, there's no way that Cincy doesn't draft a running back. And then they don't. You know what I mean? And it's like Chase Brown and bums. There's going to be other ones where it's like the team should have taken 2 and they don't take any. So who knows?
All right, so you're about to see part 1 pop over top of Shane's face. Check that out and hit the subscribe if you haven't already for part 3. We'll see you soon.